this world needs change, but the world will not experience change until we begin to experience change. A few years ago, I was asked to speak to a family at the request of the father who had a friend who was a Christian who attended the congregation where I served. The family really was in complete upheaval. One of the adult sons was on drugs, and he was stealing from the family and causing all kinds of turmoil. And as I met this family for the very first time, I had an opportunity to not only make a connection with them and try to show some compassion through the things they were going through, but I had an opportunity to share the Lord with them. And as we began talking about this situation, I told them some things. I said, look, I can help you with some things that might help you manage your situation. I said, but the reality is, for things to be what they ought to be, a change needs to occur. And they began to listen as I shared Christ with them, and they began to ask questions, but ultimately, they decided that they were not in a place where they could make that kind of commitment. A couple months later, I received a phone call from the family that the father of that family, the one who initially asked me to come visit them, his name was Jack. He had a stroke and he had fallen into a coma. And as I arrived that day, I met with a family in the intensive care unit, and there was Jack, and it was abundantly clear at that point that Jack was just being maintained by the machines that were there. I don't know how much he could hear or even understand what I was saying, but I said a little prayer with him and a prayer with the family, and I asked God for mercy. But as I left that hospital room, I began to ask myself and wonder really how much good I was able to do that dying man. Yet I could not get Jack completely out of my thoughts and prayers, and it was a strange thought that kind of occurred to me at that moment, and I said, suppose for a minute that Jesus did answer that prayer that I had prayed for God's mercy. What if God in his infinite mercy and his infinite grace had raised that man up from his deathbed back to full health? What really difference would it have made in Jack's life? Would he just leave that hospital a changed man because of God's mercy? Or would he just go back living the same kind of life, focused on himself, focused on his problems that he'd always lived? And so before I answer that question this morning, I'd actually like us to look at the Bible at a very similar occurrence that happened, because I want to talk about the transforming power of God. This is a very serious message today, but I do promise you one thing. If you will truly try to seek out the message that God has for you through his word, that you will experience the transformative power of God, because it is there for you, just as it was there for Jack, it was there for Jack's family, but it was unclaimed. And so the only question today is not, transform you? Can God change you? Can God even change perhaps your circumstance? Really the ultimate question is, will you accept that transformation of your life? We look at a text that begins with an interaction that Jesus had while he was here on the earth in Luke chapter 17. I'm going to begin reading in verse 11, and if you can follow along and try to understand this very simple interaction. Here's what it says. While he was on his way to Jerusalem, he was passing between Samaria and Galilee. And he, talking about Jesus, entered a village. 10 lepers who stood at a distance met him, and they raised their voices saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. And when he saw them, he said to them, go and show yourselves to the priests. And as they were going, they were cleansed. Now one of them, when he saw that he had been healed, he turned back, glorifying God with a loud voice, and he fell on his face at his feet, giving thanks to him. And he was a Samaritan. And Jesus answered and said, were there not 10 cleansed? But the 9, where are they? Was no one found to return to give glory to God except this foreigner? And he said to him, stand up and go, your faith has made you well. Father, I do pray this morning, as we've come today again with an open mind and active minds, and one that's able to seek righteousness and understand the things you're trying to tell us today, I pray, Lord, that you would begin by transforming our thoughts and minds to yours. Because with those transformed thoughts and a focus that's now put upon you, the power that you have for each one of us to change will begin to manifest in our life. And so, Father, I pray today that this might be a turning point for each of us. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Now here we see that there are 10 men. 10 men as good as dead. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But here they all are, all crying out to God, begging for God's mercy. And though really what they are seeking is a healing, only one of them truly experienced a transformation, even though all of them, 10 of them, were healed. Why is that? Why is it? That's how I want to get to the bottom to today. Why is it that 10 people were all given the mercy of God, yet only one of them transformed? And really, I think this is no more relevant message for the church today. There are a lot of messages about what the world needs, but I want to talk about what we need. Because what we need is a transformation. What God wants to give us is a transformation. And we cry out to God for mercy. The reason why we're here today is because we ask God for mercy, but the question is, are we going to let him change us and transform us into what he intended us to be? Why is it not good enough just to receive God's mercy? Why is it not just good enough to receive those benefits? Why is it that we need a complete makeover, a complete transformation? Well, that's what I want to study today, and actually probably the next few weeks, including Resurrection Sunday, about the transformation, how God plans to work that in amongst us as the church. Now, as I go into these things, here's the truth that I want to talk about today, is this. God's ultimate purpose, his ultimate purpose for us, for all of us, is to transform us from what we have become to what we were created to be. I want you to think about that for a minute. He wants to transform us from what we have become. There's a lot of reasons we have become what we've become, but the truth is we have not become what God created us to be, and that's what God wants to change. That's what he wants to be, the real miracle that he wants to put forth in our life. And so let's break down story into a way that really puts us under an examination today. It's not a pleasant thing to do, but it's a necessary thing to do. So let's look at these 10 men. There were 10 men that cried out for God's mercy. 11 through 13, we see this. He comes, he's on his way to Jerusalem. He passes through Samaria and Galilee. He goes to a village. And in this village, there are 10 leprous men. And they have to stand at a distance, and we'll talk about why in a minute. And together, they all have a common purpose, a common desire, a common cry, that they cry out to God, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. Let's talk about this leprosy for a minute. The word leprosy actually has its roots in the idea of being stricken. And that show people watch today, The Walking Dead, this is what leprosy was. It was, you were like the walking dead. You were as good as dead. Your body just hadn't given out yet where you were headed to be. It was a terrible disease. It ravaged you, and your body slowly was eaten away and eroded, and it smelled horrible, and it was all kinds of oozing and disgusting kind of condition you had, until eventually your body just failed to keep yourself alive anymore. That is the situation these 10 men found themselves in. And not only did they have to deal with the physical aspects of this disease, but there was much more than that, because their lives had been consumed with it, because they had become social outcasts. Because they were required by law to separate themselves from people. And this is why the 10 of them come together, and they're standing at a distance from God, from Jesus, and they're crying out together because they were required to announce themselves. They had to put on these torn rags so everyone could see from a distance that they were a leper. And if they were going to be coming near someone as traveling, they were required to say, unclean, unclean. Now, in the first century, leprosy was a disease, actually a label for any disease that was incurable that had these similar kind of characteristics. Today, leprosy actually is a particular kind of disease. But it was a more general term then, one that was communicable, one that could be spread from person to person, and one that required contact. You have to understand, in a day when human beings do not understand the concept of disease and how things are passed on from person to person, God had rules so they would be able to be protected. And so God didn't explain how these things happen, but he explained how they need to conduct themselves. So imagine yourself if you were a leper. Imagine if you had to not only deal with the terrible, probably the pain of your body, kind of eroding away, but also the social implications. You were essentially colonized with other people with your condition. And you spent your whole day thinking about this, and you probably couldn't make any money, and you probably had to cry out for alms, and people couldn't get close enough to even hand you the money. And so this is quite a devastating thing. And so these people are completely without hope as they probably understand it. And so let's talk about the men. These people had a shared condition of misery, yet obviously these people have heard about Jesus. That Jesus has the power, the authority to cure the incurable disease. And it's interesting, when they hear about this, they come as close as they can to Jesus, and they have one goal in their mind, is to seek out mercy. Mercy is getting something you don't deserve. They understand they haven't done anything to Jesus to earn his favor and his healing, but nonetheless they're asking for it, asking Jesus to have mercy upon them. And they call him, which in our translation says master. Now this is not the normal word that was commonly used. The word that's often translated master or Lord is a completely different word, and it really means master commander. In other words, he wasn't just a Lord, he wasn't just a master, but he was the Lord. He was the master. He was someone who could have authority over this condition, which no other human being could. And so there's a recognition as to the kind of authority and power that Jesus has. Really, think about this. Think about their desperation, that they've put all of their hope and all of their focus and thoughts in this one man that they have heard about named Jesus. Let's talk about why this story is recorded for us. Why is it that we would be given a story about really a display of power by God that's really hardly anything? I mean, Jesus has raised people from the dead. To cure someone from leprosy, I mean, he doesn't even have to twitch an eyelash, you know? He doesn't have to wave his hand and say any incantation. Just by the sheer thought, these people can be healed. Why is this recorded for you and for me? Because there's a great symbolism. Because while it is true, in the 21st century, physical leprosy is no longer a threat. Jesus' mercy is no less of a necessity in the 21st century than it was in the first century. Because spiritual leprosy is an ever-present danger. It's an ever-present danger. It's threatening our very lives, our eternal lives. It's threatening our spiritual condition today. It's certainly as a result of our spiritual position today. Listen to some of these words I want to share with you from God's Word. In Psalm 53, for example, it says, God looked down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there were any that did understand, that did seek God. Every one of them is gone back. They are altogether become filthy. There is none that does good, no, not one. As David writes this, he looks at a time of Israel's history where there seems to be hardly anyone in Israel who cares about God, who is trying to understand, who is trying to live a righteous life, and evil has become rampant. I dare say to you today, as we think about what our culture even is, we see that evil is certainly rampant. And dare I say that even in the church, that righteousness does not prevail and transformation is not happening the way God intends it to be. Of course, we all know the main reason. The Bible tells us, Romans 3:23, All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And that was our all common spiritual condition. All of us have fallen short. All of us have sinned, and we have earned for that death. And because of that, we have cried out to God for mercy. But what we're going to see today is very often that is the height of our ambition, but that is the ground floor of what God intended for us. And so we all need to stand in God's mercy. And Jesus tells us that without receiving mercy, the truth is we're already condemned. I think it's interesting. So many people often say, well, Jesus didn't come into the world to condemn the world. And the Bible does say that. You can read that right after John 3:16. John 3:17. For the Son of Man did not come into the world to condemn the world, but you have to keep reading. Because what it says there, the reason why Jesus didn't come into the world to condemn the world, because it stands condemned already. It's already condemned. Sin has brought about condemnation. And so Jesus didn't have to come to condemn us. We already condemned ourselves. The truth is, he came that through him the world might be saved. And so Jesus begins in his ministry preaching, and begins talking about how the people are to be. And in Matthew 5:7, what's commonly called the Beatitudes, he says this line, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy." And so mercy is what God came to give to begin our transformative process. In Matthew chapter 9, verse 27, we find that Jesus had mercy on people physically as well as spiritually. Here, as Jesus went on from there, 2 blind men followed him, crying, "Have mercy on us, Son of David," which is a messianic title. They recognized Jesus for who he is. And they asked this man, who they recognized as the Messiah come to be, to give them mercy. That is what we all need. Matthew 15:22. And a Canaanite woman from that region came out and began to cry out, saying, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is cruelly demon-possessed." So you see, everyone recognizes they need the mercy of God. People are flooding out from their houses, are following him in crowds because they're all seeking mercy. Matthew 17:15. "Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is a lunatic and is very ill, for he often falls into the fire and into the water." Again, a plea to God for mercy. Matthew 20, verse 30 now. "And 2 blind men, sitting on the road, hearing that Jesus was passing by, cried out, 'Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David.'" And so again, down at 31, the crowd sternly told them to be quiet, but they cried out all the more, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us." And so the symbolism begins with this. There's a universal problem. You don't have to be blind. You don't have to be demon-possessed. You don't have to have leprosy. The truth is, every single human being needs to seek after God for mercy. I think I probably came here understanding that this morning. So I'm just kind of really re-emphasizing something you probably already recognized. But what you need to embrace is the rest of this message today and talk about how God gives mercy and why he gives it. So let's look at the next part, which is the 10 men that benefited from God's mercy. So 10 men cried out for mercy. 10 men benefited from mercy. That's verse 14. Verse 14 says, when he, Christ, Jesus, saw them, which that word saw really means he paid attention to them. He didn't just see them. A lot of people saw them. In fact, they were required to be seen. That's why they had to announce themselves, unclean, unclean. But he didn't just see them, he paid attention to them. And then it goes on, it says, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priest." And as they were going, they were cleansed. So their cry had reached the ear of God, and now he was willing to cure them. And so let's look at this. God's mercy. They cry out for mercy. God gives them mercy towards these men. Notice the cure is not instantaneous, nor is it automatic. They had to request it. They had to make a plea for it, and God gave it. And so, but as soon as his response to them is to go show yourselves to the priest. Well, that would be like the modern day equivalent of, well, go show yourself to the Board of Health So you can be approved as now being clean and not contagious anymore. You can now go around and be amongst everyone else. You don't have to wear these rags anymore. You don't have to announce yourself anymore because you have been deemed cured. The priest in that day is the one who made that declaration. And so what he tells them in response to their cry is, go show yourselves to the priest. And so that's what the priest had to do. Faith was on these 10 men, no doubt, because they had to begin the trip to the priest before the healing came. But really, the soul man that you have understood enough, that you have come to him, have given him a title, that he is the only person that can help you, and the man gives you one instruction in response to your plea, that is to go show yourselves to the priest. What are you going to do? You're going to go show yourself to the priest. What other recourse do you have? Because the priest will only make that declaration after they're clean, not before. Now think about this. Think about what it was like for these 10 men who began walking down this road, and they began to recognize. Now, this is not something that they could not observe. This was something dramatic. This was something supernatural. They had a disease that was slowly eating away their flesh of their body. Now, in the midst of their trip to go see the priest would be, their body begins to heal, begins to regenerate right before their eyes, and they now have a second chance on life. Can you just put yourself in the shoes of those lepers for a minute? Because you're really there more than you realize. What it would be like to be given a second chance on life. What about the soldier? I read a story of a young man who jumped down 30 feet and he landed on an improvised explosive device, an IED. That's where he landed. And it blew him about as far up as he had jumped down. And he lost his legs in that. But yet, he was given a second chance on life. He didn't die. What about the man or the girl who attempts suicide? And for whatever reason, that doesn't become successful, a second chance. Well, a person who was involved in a car crash, and maybe they died on the scene, and yet the medical professionals at the scene were able to revive them and bring them back to life. I think that's an all too familiar story in our community, that people are given second chances. Can you imagine how happy these 10 dead men walking were to be alive once again? God had given them a blessing, something they could not earn, something they didn't deserve just because they asked for it, but nonetheless, God gave them mercy and answered their prayer. And out of that heart of graciousness and mercy, God had heard their eyes and given them the benefit of his love. They now have a second chance on life. Now I want us to turn our attention to ourselves. God's mercy. Let me ask you, and I really raise your hand. I want you to ask yourself this question: how many of you have truly enjoyed the benefits of God's mercy this year, that God has blessed this year? If you, I think if we allowed you to raise your hand, if you were honest, I think you would have to recognize that God has blessed every single one of us this year. God has truly given us something that we have not deserved. But how many of us back in our lives throughout the years and see God's hand through all that good health and good jobs and possessions and joys and all kinds of things? We may not have everything we want, but we certainly have everything we need. And let me remind you again that none of those things are earned blessings. It's God's mercy. God's mercy just comes with an expectation. God's mercy given to us comes with his expectation of transformation. I want you to listen to Jesus' words in Matthew 5. Here's what he says. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? If you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Therefore, you are to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. In other words, if you just do the very basic things, you just love those who love you, you take care of those you're related to, then everyone in the world tends to do those things. You're not transformed. You're no different. But I'm telling you to be different. There's an expectation of transformation. Listen to Jesus here. Perfection is mentioned there. Luke 6:35 now. But love your enemies and do good and lend and expect nothing in return, for your reward will be great. For you will be sons of the Most High, and he himself is kind to ungrateful and evil men. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. So one of the ways in which we are to be perfect as our Heavenly Father is perfect is that we need to be merciful the way He's merciful. That's a refrain that's repeated over and over and over again in the New Testament. If you want God to forgive you, you need to forgive others. You want mercy, you have to give mercy. Here's what the Apostle Paul said to the church. Do you think lightly of the riches of his kindness and tolerance and patience, not knowing that the kindness of God leads you to repentance? Now hear me. God answered your cry for mercy for the sole purpose to lead you to change. That's what the word repentance means. It means to change. Yes, change mind, heart, change thought, words, change actions, but to change. God forgave you so you would change. The truth is, everyone is blessed by God in many ways, but I want to talk to you today about mercy and spiritual healing that we hear from Jesus Christ. Notice, I'm a numbers person. I didn't have to think too hard to recognize that if 9 people went on and did not come back and thank Jesus, and were not changed, and just went back on with their lives, that the transformation, though there was 100% forgiveness and mercy, there was only a 10% transformation. Because only 1 came back. 1 of the 10 came back. 9 did not come. Maybe think about the story of 2 men who were adrift in a raft in the open sea, and it looked pretty bad for them. Finally, one of them, frightened, began to pray, "Oh Lord, I've broken most of the commandments. I drink, I curse, I treat people like dirt. But if my life were spared now, I'll change. I promise I'll never again curse." And suddenly his friend cried out to him and said, "Wait, Jim, don't go too far. I think I see another ship." And doesn't that not epitomize what we often do? We make a deal with God, don't we? And we're so thankful, oh God, if you just do this, then I'll do this. It's like we look at God as some kind of genie from a lamp. We're just going to rub him the right way, and he's going to produce what I want him to produce. Or like he's like a gambling machine. You know, I just pull the lever, and I think God's going to strike it rich for me. And I'm not going to make any promises if I don't see you producing, God. That's why we don't change. We want God. We want the free mercy, but we don't want the change. God, what we want. We want Jesus. We want mercy. We want to be healed, but we want it on our terms. And this is the logical spiritual paradox I'd like to talk about today. We want to be healed, but we don't want to be changed. We want to be healed. We don't want to be changed. We want to be forgiven. We don't want to be transformed. And so that leads us to our last point, and that is the one was transformed by mercy. All that he had been, he turned back, glorifying God with a loud voice. He fell on his face at his feet, giving thanks to him. Jesus answered and said, were there not 10 cleansed? But the 9, where are they? Was no one found who returned to give glory to God except this foreigner? And he said, stand up and go, your faith has made you well. So let's look at this one transformation of this one person. The one man came back and experienced more than just physical transformation. Had a change of the heart. This man was a Samaritan. This man was despised by Jews. He was considered to be a half-breed because the Samaritans were a race of people that came about because of the intermarrying of Jews and Gentiles. And no doubt God prohibited that, but the truth is their attitude against this foreigner comes back to haunt them because the fact that God's grace was given to this man and he's the one that changed. And he becomes the exemplar. Jesus makes a point. Now here comes the most amazing point. And Jesus uses rhetorical questions. Rhetorical questions are ones he's going to answer, but they're used to make a point. So let's look at these 3 questions. Number 1, were not 10 cleansed? Well, yes, Jesus, we counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 dead people walking, brought back to normal life. Yes, there were all 10, Jesus. Well, then, where are the... Well, Lord, they were probably very anxious to get back to their families and friends and reunite with them and carry on their lives because now that you have blessed them with a healing. And maybe while they were there, they even mentioned your name. Incredible. Should be happy. Where are the other 9, he wants to know. Where is the transformation? Where is the real change? Not just the healing, I did that. Where's the transformation on your part? Now, the third question is, were there not any found who returned to give glory to God except this foreigner? The other 9 were just as this guy. Don't be so hard on them. They were just too excited to come back and tell you. I mean, there's so much other things on their minds. We give them all kinds of excuses, but the truth is, the reason why they're healed was to transform, and it didn't happen. It was an aborted process. Because they accepted but they rejected the transformation. And I want to tell you, my dear friends, the reason why the modern church is so feckless and so impotent in the world is because a lot of us want the mercy of God, but very few of us want the transformation of God. We don't want to be changed. We want to go on our lives and just add water. And we always, and you can tell because every time somebody questions their faith, they look back to the water. Oh, well, I was baptized, which means, oh, I was healed. I was healed. They don't want to look at their transformation because there hasn't been any. They look back at the water. And look, I'm all about the water, friends. To start you got to be healed. We need the healing. But we also need the reason for the healing. I think many of us have missed. Maybe the church has failed to explain the reason for the healing. The reason for the healing was transformation. Because what we had become was not what we created to be. And so there needs to be a transformation, more to be what we created to be. So this is why Jesus is grieved. This is what makes Jesus cry. This is what cuts him to the heart. That only one man cared enough to truly be changed. And that's what he says in verse 19. Of course, our translation says, your faith healed. That word healed is the same word for saved. It's sozo. And it does mean healed. When you were saved, you were healed. When Jesus cured their leprosy, they were healed. But that was the beginning. That was the hinge point so they could be formed. It was not the object of the exercise. It was the beginning of it. And so look at the between the 9 and the 1. All 10 men got what they wanted from Jesus, but only 9, well, only 1 came back. 9 of them only wanted to remove the convenience of the leprosy. They still focused on self. They did what he said, and then they were done. Somehow, legalism has come out that if we just did what Jesus said, we're done. And we're not really looking for the transformation. And maybe it's because we're so focused on getting people to the place of healing that we have not explained what the healing is for. I don't know. But I'm telling you, if you haven't heard it, you're hearing it today. That's the point. That's why you came there, to be transformed. You have to be healed, but you have to be transformed. And let's talk about our transformation by God's mercy. Not enough to receive the benefits of God's mercy. God's mercy is given so we can be transformed. Here's what I'm trying to tell you. The Christian religion is not enough. It's the Christian relationship that Jesus died. That's a good word for it. That's what he bought for you. A relationship, not a religion. And God forbid, there's people who will not go to church because of the religion. And they say, I don't understand how the religion changes my life. You know how many times I've heard that? I don't see how the religion changed my life. I say, brother, sister, it doesn't change your life. It just empowers the change. Because now you're working under the transformative power of God. But if you don't change, it was a waste for you to come to the water. And so what point was for them to be healed if they were not going to be transformed, changed by God? Blessings are meant to lead us to heavenly ones. So here's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about our theme this year in a new way. See the unseen in 2017. I'm going to suggest to you that the unseen includes you. The unseen includes you. The unseen you. There's part of you that's yet unseen because it's not been transformed. Listen to words to the church once again by the Lord. He says through the Apostle Paul, 2 Timothy 5. Therefore, from now on, we recognize no one according to the flesh. Even though we have known Christ according to the flesh, we know, yet now we know him in this way no longer. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creature. The old things passed away, and behold, new things have come. New things have come. And so my conclusion is this. Through God's transformative power, you will see the unseen you this year. Part of what's unseen in 2017 is your transformation, the transformed you. It's available to you. God is begging you. If he's healed you, he healed you so you could have that. It's ready, waiting for you to claim it, but you haven't gone to it. And let me suggest to you, there's a reason why, and here's the reason why. I'll tell you through a story that I read. A woman who grew up, and she grew up in a very poor situation. It was very terrible, the conditions that she had to go through. And it happened that she fell in love with a man, and they got married, and this man was very well off and rich. And her life started on a different trajectory as she got married. But not too much longer, time had gone by, and she wasn't feeling well, and she went to the doctor. And he admitted her to the hospital to run tests, and she was there a couple days. They were still running tests. She wasn't feeling any better, and the doctor came in the room one day and said, got some news to tell you. And the woman said she knew that she was dying. She didn't feel good. Doctor said, your liver is not working. We don't know why. We've tried everything we can think of to get it started. It won't start. And then he left the room. He had a good bedside manner, you know. Woman realized she's dying. And she got a little angry. And she got in her mind, she's going to go to the chapel because the hospital chapel. She's going to tell God off because she's upset, and she wants to do it face to face in her mind, okay? So she starts in her weakened condition to go to the chapel, and she opened up the door, and she walked in. She got so dizzy she fell on the ground, and she said, I think I blacked out for a period of time. And when I woke up, I looked up, and on the wall, there was some words that said, have mercy on me, a sinner. Have mercy on me, a sinner. And she said, it's like that God was speaking to me at that moment. I realized that I was walking in to tell God off and tell him, you know what, God, you've been portraying yourself as this benevolent God for 2,000 years, and all you do is wait for somebody to get their life just straightened out a little bit, and man, you just whack them again. That was my mindset. That's where I was. And then when I looked up at my weakened condition from the floor and I saw those words for the very first time, the thought occurred to me that I had an attitude problem. That really I had not changed at all. God had improved my circumstances, but I was still the same bitter person I'd always been. And so then I just began on that floor repeating those words, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. Have mercy on me, a sinner. And eventually she got up and she walked back to her room and she got back into her bed, and a couple days later, the doctor walked into the room and said, well, your liver's working again. We don't know why it stopped. We don't know why it started, but it's working. And she said she steadily became stronger and she got discharged from the hospital. But she said, it wasn't the physical healing that changed me. What changed me was I saw God in a new light, that he was God and I was not. And the healing and the things he had done in my life was me to change. And it took something very dramatic for me to change. And she said, look, I don't know why all those things happened. I don't know if God was letting those things happen to me so I would change or what it was. But the fact is, that was the moment when I recognized that I truly needed a transformation. And so I had this little quote for you that someone actually shared with me yesterday. Is there one on the next slide there somewhere? This is a great saying. Salvation is free, but discipleship will cost you everything you have. The salvation is the healing, the discipleship is the change. You think I have a hard time getting people in the world healed? I do. You know what I have a harder time doing? Getting healed people to transform. Why is that? I don't know why, but I'm bringing it to your attention today. Why is it that 90% of those who are healed by Jesus weren't transformed? I don't know why, but it was the fact. And I'm laying it before you because I don't want the 90% to be in here, okay? They want to be somewhere else, that's fine, I guess, but I don't want us to be the 90%, I want us to be the 10%. That we can't just crave the healing, we have to crave the transformation. When I used to read this account between Jesus and these lepers, I always used to see it through the lens of thankfulness, Only one was thankful, the 9 were not thankful. But it's a much bigger problem than that, isn't it? It's not much more than thankfulness. That one, and you say, well, how do you know that one man was so transformed? Because that one came back, and not only did he give glory to God, but he worshiped. He got down on his face before Jesus. That was a transformation. And I'm suggesting to you, it's time that we get down on our faces before God and say, God, I need a transformation. And we think because we went to the place of healing that our life is just supposed to be great now, and everything, when it doesn't go right, we get mad at God. Well, God, I let you heal me. Why haven't you made it easy for you? Let me ask you a question. Should God make your life easy if you're going away from him? Does that sound like the kind of loving God that we should have, the one that makes it easiest to get further away from him? I don't think so. That's when I want him to thump me on the head. That's what I want. That's when I want him to say, hey, guess what? You need to come back because this is where the place of transformation is. And so I'm going to ask you today to think about, where are you? Are you the 10% or are you the 90%? And if you say you're the 10% too quickly, I think you might be fooling yourself. You might just be fooling yourself, because then you really got to think about, okay, I received the healing, but now I'm going to want you to think about, where's my transformation? Where's my change? It's not going to happen in a day. It's a process, okay? But you need to start walking, okay? Just like those 10 did originally. They all walked together, and they received the healing. The one came back and said, I got the healing, now it's time for the transformation. That's what I'm laying at your feet today. I pray that you will think about how God transforms. How God transforms? He transforms us in our conversations with him. He transforms us as we meet around his son's table and we examine ourselves. He transforms us when we study together. He transforms us in our assembly and fellowship. There's all kinds of opportunity for transformation, but we don't embrace it because we really don't want it. We just want to continue on our life and just add the healing to it. We want to get rid of the inconvenience of the sin and the guilt, but we don't want to embrace the righteousness and the holiness. And that shows a real problem, is what I'm suggesting to you. And suggesting to you that the 90% is not really going to cut it. It's the 10% that Jesus is not worrying over, because he's here. He's asking, where are the other 9? Were you not all cleansed? But I pray today, if you've not yet been healed,